Greetings, everyone. Thanks for joining me for yet another edition of Electric Avenue's YouTube updates. I say that without the remotest trace of sarcasm, pathos, whatever. Uh, Thanks again. Um, we are doing the new releases for March 8th, 2024. And, it's kind of a middling to good week. This is like, I think, that sort of era where we're kind of working into spring break here, and we're basically headed for the blitz that is Record Store Day and all of the releases spring that are numerous and far and wide reaching to mention. And so I will get started here with today's new releases and try to keep this as brief as possible because I do have a recommends today that I feel like I must take some time to talk about. And also, I had yet another customer pass away. I found out it had been a while ago and I hadn't seen him. So it's been a very kind of reflective period for me and the store as far as people that we care about and are sad to see leave their earthly coil. So, all right, let me get started. First of all, Nora Jones, her new album Visions. And this is on a special exclusive cover for indie stores and orange blend vinyl. So I guess it's some kind of swirly orange type stuff. Featuring Running and Paradise and more. What I've heard of this, I mean, there's a song called I Just Want to Dance. I don't think you should be concerned that she's gone like um, techno pop, dubstep, whatever. But it seems like there's actually a little more sort of maybe guitar on the tracks that I've heard from this. So, produced by Leon Michaels. So, new Nora Jones. She's been at it for what 20 years now almost releasing records. I remember when her first CD came out because it was during the CD era, and they priced that CD aggressively at the time at $9.99 just to see how it would do, and it blew up because people were sort of like really into that sort of romantic throwback sound of that era. And I think by the time we sort of wrapped things up at that store, and I was looking, I think that one store had sold over 2,000 copies of that album on CD. So she definitely has made her mark. And daughter of Ravi Shankar. The other sort of big kind of pop release this week, Ariana Grande, her new album Eternal Sunshine. I don't know if it's of the spotless mind, but yeah, she's not licking any donuts on the cover here. That's a very Kate Bushy look right there, right? Sort of looks like the cover of the Wow single. Anyway, this is, I think, what they've been saying is it's kind of a dance record. So, um, well, Kate Bush meets disco, I guess. I don't know. Check that one out if you're interested. All right, and then the next big release, new release this week, Judas Priest. It is 2024, and this is their new album, Invincible Shield. And this is a limited edition heavyweight red vinyl, the Metal Gods brand new studio album. And well, you know, KK Downing isn't part of this because he's got KK's Priest. But so here we have what 11 tracks. I think they've been working on this for a couple of years. Their last record was it Firepower that was very well received and got very good reviews. So I expect that this is probably sort of a continuation of that idea. If you're into Judas Priest, give it a shout out, check it out, whatever you do. All right, reissues. Or, well, this is actually first time. Rolling Stones live at the Wiltern Theater. This is what 2002 and 3. The Rolling Stones embarked on a Lick's World Tour in 2002 and 3 to celebrate their 40th anniversary, featuring the band performing in arenas and stadiums and the occasional theater. In November 2002, they arrived in LA to perform, treating fans to a set heavy on rarities, which feel right at home in an intimate setting. While some of the hits are performed, this night at the Wiltern is for the rarely played classics, including Stray Cat Blues, No Expectations, and a cover of Everybody Needs Somebody to Love featuring a guest spot by the legendary Solomon Burke. So it's a 3-record set made in Germany. Probably Optimal. I'm not sure who makes that, but I'm sure that sounds good. And another big reissue this week. Alice Cooper, Billion Dollar Babies. Probably, I would say, one of his top 3 most revered albums. It is in the shape of a dollar bill, and sort of when you fold it out, I think, or a wallet, you should still have the bill inside. I'm sure it probably says that here somewhere, but the original album remastered and a live set from the tour, single versions and rare tracks. It does not say, but they've been pretty faithful to the original packaging on these deluxe editions. They actually still had the panties and the schools out cover, so I would assume that the dollar bill is still in that Billion Dollar Babies cover. And another big reissue, UFO, Lights Out, continuing through the UFO catalog. So, like the Alice Cooper, which is a three record set, this is also 3 records. 2024 remaster and Live at the Roundhouse, 1977, 180 gram, and fully restored artwork, as the others have been. And Alice Cooper was also 3 records. So, yeah. So they're both pretty substantial collections. The Alice Cooper costs a little bit more, probably because you're paying for the bill. No, I don't know. All right. And another big sort of, these are like, this is the week of sort of catalog reissues that have some weight and heft. So heavy for my hand. Pixies, this is at the BBC. And this is the first time on vinyl. The 1988 to 91 BBC sessions. This is also being reissued on CD. So were those others that I mentioned. I don't think I've seen the UFO CD yet, though. Anyway, so this has... well, maybe I did. No, I haven't. This features 3 records also. And you get Allison, Valoria, let's see, Manta Ray, Down to the Well, Wave of Mutilation, yeah, Monkey Gone to Heaven. I mean, if you're a Pixies fan, you kind of almost need this. I think because it's a really good representation of how the band sounds live in a studio without, so much crowd noise or anything like that. And how good they really are. Very tight-knit. Ironically, their female replacement for Kim Deal, Paz, I never get her last name right, Lechtanen, was just, I guess, sort of dismissed from the group. They said that she left, and she said, I found out the way everyone else found out, which was by looking on the internet. I don't know. Maybe there's something more to that, but anyway. But that's classic Pixies, old Pixies. A couple more new releases. Bleachers, Jack Antonoff, superstar producer. His, I guess I'd call it his full-time project, even though really his full-time project seems to be more being a producer to Taylor Swift and Lana Del Rey and Florence and the Machine and numerous other sort of female starlets that he hangs out with. But this is his sort of solo album, solo, I guess, pressed on indie exclusive blue vinyl. This picture looks like he's really trying to, push that Springsteen envelope that he's really, I guess was sort of kind of tired of doing a lot of the sort of very processed synthetic kind of stuff he was doing. So if you're into Springsteen and stuff like that, I think that's where that's going. And then Dion from Dion and the Belmonts. This guy's still around, still making records. This is, I think, the third or fourth major sort of duets type album that he's done. This one features him and a bunch of female blues singers. We get Shamika Copeland, Sue Foley, Danielle Nicole, Maggie Rose, Joanne Shaw Taylor, Susan Tedeschi, Carlene Carter, Rory Block, Debbie Davies. You get the picture. Songs like Stop, Drop, and Roll, Do Ladies Get the Blues, Don't You Want a Man Like Me, Sugar Daddy. I'm sure it's great. Yeah, Dion, he really has had quite the renaissance as far as like what his career has done since kind of beating the drug addictions and all that. And people finally found out that he's a really great blues guitarist. So good for him. All right. Lorena McKennett and her new album, The Road Back Home. Lorena, you might remember her if you're old enough from the late 90s. She had a song called The Mummers Dance that was a fairly big sized hit on like NPR type stations. And she plays the harp and the piano, and I had the chance to see her live back then. She brought in all of her Moroccan tapestries and got to meet her, and she was really one of the nicest people that I've met as far as like a backstage situation. And Canadian, and really into like sort of Celtic music and stuff like that. So this one features Bonnie Portmore, which I believe she's done before. Searching for the Lambs, Mary and the Soldier, On a Bright May Morning, As I Roved Out. I think you're kind of getting the picture here. One of these songs has some kind of a Gaelic title, and I hesitate to pronounce that. So anyway, new Lorena McKennett. I'm sure it's probably, very Celtic influenced and very sort of pretty and well arranged, and she's a great artist. Okay, and let's move on to some sort of reissue things. Another Alice Cooper. There are two this week, so we get Billion Dollar Babies reissued with a concert, and here we get a concert from 2009, Theater of Death, live at Hammersmith. And this is on red vinyl, the monumental live extravaganza for the first time on LP, strictly limited edition, clear red, 2 LP and DVD, and a numbered ticket replica that takes you back to the world of horror. Okay. With all the smash hits such as Poison, School's Out, I'm 18, and more. Exclusive edition of 3,000 units, so not too many. Looking forward to this. Viagra Boys, their album Welfare Jazz. This is a reissue of that, and this hasn't been on vinyl for a couple of years now. I don't think their last album was kind of a underground smash, and sort of their first album is highly revered, and then this was the second, which people still liked, but it wasn't quite as popular as the other two. So now they're like, we better put this back out because we have demand for it. So new Viagra Boys record reissue, new Thundercat reissue, and this one is The Apocalypse, and that cover is insane, right? And this is a 10-year anniversary edition Memento Mori, limited edition translucent red vinyl, contains 2 bonus tracks. Thundercat is a great hip hop bass player, and he gets a lot of guest stars on his records. This was executive produced by Flying Lotus. Some of you will know who that is. Another reissue, Dry Cleaning, and this is EP. It's basically a 2 EP set that they've put on a single record here. Boundary Road Snacks and Drinks and Sweet Princess on transparent blue vinyl. And Dry Cleaning are sort of known as like kind of dry as far as like the musicianship. Very good band, technically, musically. And then their singer, she sings or talks quite a bit, and it's more like talking than rap. So if you haven't heard Dry Cleaning, I would say check out their album Stump Work from a year or two ago. That's probably a good place to start. Nothing. Guilty of Everything. What an ironic CD or cover for that. This is a Philly band, 10-year anniversary. This is one of their highest praised albums. Black Ice vinyl, limited to 500 copies. So if you want this, I would say get it quickly. The Philly Miserablists are the preeminent heavy shoegaze band of the last decade. And any track on this record, the careening bent nail, the surging hymn to pillory, the bashing get well, the ballooning title track demonstrate why. And that is from Revolver magazine. So, all right. One of my favorite records of the 90s that doesn't get talked about a whole lot is Curve and the album Cuckoo. And this was it was their second full-length album. They had a set of EPs kind of early that were grouped into what became an album. So this is technically the second full length, but really it's kind of the third. And this is a limited edition of 2,000 copies, individually numbered on pink and purple marbled vinyl, featuring the singles Missing Link and Super Blaster. I have their CD box set right back here too that just came out. They were sort of the band Garbage would sort of take on as like the template for what Curve did, but then Garbage would do it more commercially. And that was Butch Vig's band. This featured Tony Halliday, who was she's like a kind of ethereal rock singer, and Dean Garcia was the bass player from Eurythmics, and they got a record deal on Anxious Records, which was Dave Stewart of Eurythmics record label, sort of an indie label. And they worked with Alan Moulder as a producer, who went on to work with like Smashing Pumpkins. And I mean, Alan was producing huge artists in the 90s and mixing their albums, Nine Inch Nails. And I just don't know why Curve didn't break through more. Maybe it was because Alan was more focused on the others, so they didn't have to drive quite as hard because money wasn't as much of an issue for them because he was making it in other ways. I don't know. But this, and it also could have been the fact that maybe the major label that was promoting these albums, even though they were on indies, might not have really known what to do with them because they were sort of kind of shoegaze in a way and had a hard edge, but were also sort of more heavy rocking at times. And then they had a female lead singer, and they were a British band. I think in America they just didn't know what to do with them. But I did see them play live once. It was during a snowstorm, and there were probably about 10 people there, and it was incredible. They were really great. So it didn't even matter how many people they were playing for. But this features the single Missing Link, as I mentioned, and Super Blaster. Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus is great. Crystal is great. So it's very kind of like heavy in a way, but not like in a metal sort of way. It's just kind of chugging sort of shoegaze. I believe they used a fair amount of drum machine on the tracks, so there's kind of a clangy, constant percussion thing going on, and her voice just sort of floats over it. And sometimes it gets a little bit more aggressive when it needs to, but I love Curve. Great and underrated band. And anytime Curve's name comes up anywhere, people are like, "Oh, you mean the original Garbage?" Which I don't know if that's really sounds like a good compliment, but whatever. Somebody else that I'm sort of obsessed with that I've talked about a fair amount here, Kirsty MacColl. They're reissuing her albums Kite and Electric Landlady on vinyl, but as half speed master editions. So now I'm like, do I have to buy these again? Maybe. I don't know how many times I bought them, but Kite is a really, really great 80s record. I don't know if I mentioned she was the wife and then ex-wife of Steve Lillywhite, the producer for U2, the Smiths, whatever, and he worked on a lot of her stuff. He actually produced this album. She hung around in the studio a lot with like Morrissey and people like that. So she would sing on Smith's records as backups, and then she would cover Smith's songs. But anyway, and Billy Bragg was another one. But this album features "Innocence," "Free World," "Days," which was a Kink song that she covered really well. "Don't Come the Cowboy with Me, Sonny Jim" is kind of interesting song, and "What Do Pretty Girls Do" kind of became a mantra for her. This is a really great jangle pop record. If you're into REM and stuff like that, check that out. And another that came a little bit later, and so Electric Landlady. This album, interesting, like the single "Walking Down Madison" featured kind of like break beats and a drum machine, but it was co-produced or co-written by Johnny Marr of the Smiths. And then she would have songs on here like "My Affair," which were kind of Latin. She brought in like sort of like horn players, and it was very like Caribbean sounding. And I think that was the first real major indication that later in her career she would do the album Tropical Brainstorm, which was a very Latino flavored album. It's a great album. Also features songs like "He Never Mentioned Love," which is again a very kind of catchy jangle pop song. "Children of the Revolution's" a little quieter. "Halloween," "All I Ever Wanted," great. And actually this album also sort of like didn't do quite as well as I think they expected. It got sort of iffy reviews in the UK, and I think in retrospect they also see it as a better album than what maybe the press was giving it at the time. So you just, it's hard to bottle that kind of spirit and personality that she had, and not a lot of people had that. So it kind of gets lost, I think, in like trying to examine the music a lot. But all right, and then Junior Wells and Buddy Guy. This is live at the Newport Folk Festival, 1968. This is on orange vinyl. This is made by Cleopatra Blues. So I think you kind of, if you're aware of Cleopatra, you sort of know what you're getting. But this features "One Room Country Shack," "Checking on My Baby," "Hoodoo Man Blues," "Messing with the Kid," "Help Me," and "Stormy Monday," and "I Got You, I Feel Good." So that might be worth it to you, some of you to have on vinyl. And okay, so we get to my recommends of the week. So this week I'm picking one of my favorite records of the 80s, and this is one of my favorite albums of all time now. And it's an album that I think at the time it sort of went right past me. I was kind of a fan of the "It's My Life" album for Talk Talk, and it had a fair amount more like synth and drum machine, and maybe my ears just weren't ready for it at the time. And now looking back, I've bought this album a couple of times. Absolutely love it. It's a much more organic kind of record. Is Talk Talk, "Color of Spring." And when people ask me like, what is your favorite Talk Talk album, I usually say this one, and it's interesting that an album that I didn't buy for probably a good 10, 12 years after, at least 10, would become one of my 10 favorite albums of the decade and probably one of my 10 or 20 favorites of all time. Uh, so I think because It's My Life had an interesting trajectory in the US, it was more popular than it was even in the UK. The single It's My Life was a hit number 30, 31 on the charts here. It actually probably got, well, I know it got played a lot on K Rock in California because, in Los Angeles, because No Doubt covered the song and had a big hit with it again in the late 90s or early aughts. And so that's a great song. And then this album, it didn't really have to, for me, that kind of same song. But now, in retrospect, I feel like Life's What You Make It, which was a top 10 hit in the UK, I don't really understand why it wasn't a hit in the US market. It's like the US didn't know what to do with this. It had a fair amount of Hammond and organ, played by none other than Steve Winwood, who had played a lot of organ with Traffic, was having a lot of hits on the same sort of record labels at the time, EMI, and played at least half of the tracks on this album. And it's such an influential sound on this record. And I think because it was the 80s and we were so inundated with synthesizer sounds, to all of a sudden hear organic organ, to hear acoustic bass, to hear acoustic guitar. There were very few artists that were sort of doing that. I mean, I think of people like David Sylvian, who were kind of after he left Japan or late Japan, felt there was a much more acoustic kind of take on like art rock, progressive rock, um, sort of that kind of style. And so this kind of did a sort of a 180. I mean, the band sort of started as a very Duran Duran type sounding synth rock band, and by album number 4, which was the one right after this, they'd completely morphed into some sort of avant-garde jazz rock group. Very like spacey, jazzy, sort of Mark Hollis was the lead singer. He unfortunately passed away 7, 8 years ago. One of the most probably you have to really get used to his voice, I think, a lot, because it has this very pleading sort of urgent sound to it, and it's much of the time unintelligible because he doesn't really enunciate the words, at least from this album sort of onward. It's kind of the Cocteau Twins syndrome with Elizabeth Fraser, where it's the sort of the male counterpart. His voice doesn't have necessarily that soaring quality that hers does, and the different sounds of her ranges, it's more plaintive and unadorned, extremely like direct in a way, like he's really channeling his emotions. So I would say, okay, so this album opens with the track "Happiness is Easy," and I think we're immediately kind of getting like a Peter Gabriel influence, maybe from like what the Security or the number 4 album was sort of like, and which is ironic because Peter Gabriel's So album came out 3 months after this, and it went mega. And I think because Peter sort of took these ideas and harnessed them in a way that made them super commercial, Talk Talk didn't do that. They kind of tried to steer away from the commercial, except for a couple cases on this album. And that's why I love this album so much, is that the balance of the commercial and the art rock is really, really good. That's not so far into one or the other. And I do love some of their more art rock albums all the way through, but this one for me, because there's still a sense of like real melodies to grasp onto. But anyway, so Happiness is Easy opens sort of almost like a Peter Gabriel track. There's a lot of clicky percussion. You sort of notice like albums like this and like Blue Nile's albums of the era, how there's more attention to the detail of the percussion sounds, which now you could probably say that's more of a influence in like electronic music. But at the time, it was almost like every drum beat had kind of a different tone or texture to it, um, which goes to uh, the sort of thought of the drummer and keeping all that stuff in mind. Same with the bass playing. Paul Paul trying to remember his last Webb, who became Rustin Man and did an album later with Beth Gibbons, and then some of Portishead and some albums of his own. Very thoughtful sort of bass playing on these records. Guitars, there were some guest guitars from David Rhodes, who played with Peter Gabriel on those records that I've already mentioned. Also, Robbie McIntosh, who was with Pretenders for a long time, went on to play with Paul McCartney, and John Mayer is on this record. So anyway, I keep saying Happiness is Easy. You kind of get this sort of like clicky drum percussion, the sort of sensitive piano chords, Mark's sort of plaintive vocal that you kind of feel gaining sort of energy. And then you get things like children's choirs and interesting solos from different acoustic instruments. It's really a great song, the way it sort of changes texture, changes keys. I think this album does a great job of going from major to minor keys and back and forth unexpectedly. The second song, I Don't Believe in You, has a little bit more of obviously a skeptical kind of lyric, and it's a little darker. It has a little bit more of a beat that's sort of like a tapping sort of foot toe tapper beat. The third track, Life's What You Make It. Now, see, that's the track that I go, that should have been a hit in the US. Why wasn't that a hit in the US? It's got this incredible kind of like bass melody that goes throughout the whole track, and then this incredible like plaintive electric guitar riff, and with Mark's sort of like kind of like almost like shouting vocals at times, and it's just a rousing sort of song. Great piano in that bass part, and kind of really interesting drum beat throughout. Very catchy song, and repetitive in a way that it makes you remember the song. There's a reason that song was top 10 in the UK, and none of the other singles, there were 3 more from this, none of them made the top 40 in the UK. The album did fairly well. I think it was actually their biggest selling album, but it did not sell as well in the US as the previous album, It's My Life. So that was kind of like, Talk Talk was sort of seeing their fortunes kind of decline in the US. And then after this, they released a greatest hits album in the UK, and they reissued It's My Life as a single and Life's What You Make It. And both of them did very well. It's My Life did much better the second time around. So anyway, I keep digressing. There's only 8 tracks on this album. The 4th track, April 5th, is a very kind of soft, you get some sort of woodwind type sounds, and the organ, that Winwood organ that creeps in, is great. And then when you flip over the record, you get Living in Another World, which was one of the singles, and that has a much more kind of driving pop sort of beat to it. And it could have also been a pretty big hit had they known what to do with it in the US, but they didn't. And Give It Up, the song that follows that, same sort of thing. It's a very catchy song, but it maybe isn't a typical sort of radio hit. It's got a little bit of a lower, slower kind of beat to it as well. Chameleon Day is just very, it's almost like you've been transported into an atmospheric sort of greenhouse, and you're surrounded by, I mean, that's the great thing about this album. I think also the cover is sort of representative of what the sounds of the music are. And so you get like the kind of feeling like, I can hear the birds in the music, and I can hear like the sort of sway of the wind and stuff like that, and just the gentle sort of instrumentation and Mark's sort of quiet vocals on that track. And then the last track, Time It's Time, is again a very sort of like Gabriel-esque type song where it kind of has major and minor keys and more of a drum beat. And by the end, you're getting like the children's choir back. You're getting uh, recorders. Wood, as far as woodwinds, I mean, when's the last time you heard recorders so much on a pop record? I don't know. I can't think. Maybe. I'd have to really like a Carpenter's record. I mean, you might have to go way back to like the Renaissance to hear as many recorders as we heard on this record. But fantastic, just fantastic from start to finish. And like I said, it's 8 tracks. They're fairly long tracks, so it's a normal length album. What's considered normal length in the 40-45 minute range, but very good. I give Talk Talk an A+ for this record. And Color of Spring, check it out. If you have not, you are missing out. It is on the list of 1001 greatest albums you must hear before you die, or whatever that book was. So, and yeah, I sort of feel like after that, Mark Hollis went on with the band, made the two more albums I mentioned, and then about 7 or 8 years passed, and he made a solo record, and that was it. He sort of just kind of vanished. He apparently had quite a few drug problems, or something about heroin I've read about, and I think it maybe was a mode of self-preservation to get out of the music business. He's obviously someone who is more driven by his art than by the commercial aspects of what the music business would have asked from him. So, check out Color Spring. Thanks, guys, for watching me again this week. Next week, March 15th, going to be a big week. Black Crow's first album in 13 years. Oh my gosh. And a bunch more stuff. You'll see. And Record Store Day is fast approaching. We're going to have a little listening party here for the new Waxahachie album. That's 5 p.m. on the 21st of March, so the night before it releases. Give away like a test pressing, I think, and hopefully, and have some posters or something like that. So anyway, get ready for that. Thank you so much, and have a great week. See you next time. Peace.